India has once again successfully demonstrated its military prowess, and this time in the form of a successful testing and launch of its hypersonic missile system off the coast of Odisha from the integrated test range situated at the Abdul Kalam Island. So before we get into the thick of things, the location where this has happened. So this is the state of Odisha. Here we have the this is the Bhitarkanika National Park. Very important again in the news. This recent cyclone which came and affected the eastern coast of India, Dana. It affected this area also anyway. So this part, this small speck of land surrounded by water is the Abdul Kalam Island, earlier known as the Wheeler Island. Another important complex of the integrated test range, which is used by India to maneuver and test its military capabilities and missiles, is located off the coast of Odisha near Chandipur. Fine. So these are the important locations which time and again they keep coming, and we have to be aware of these. Fine. So, what our agenda for today will be, first of all, we have to go back to school because I'm not going to act like a news reporter and sensationalize the launching and show you videos and all. No. So, first, we will understand the basics because we are talking about hypersonic. It's not just bashing and eliminating and bombarding targets. No, we have to get behind the science. Basics will involve the different type of frequencies, the speeds, and hence their namings. Because for a long time, even this used to bother me. Okay. Then we are going to describe after basics the different frequencies because sound is a form of energy which can be expressed in a form of a wave. Okay. So after basics, we are going to briefly discuss the types of missiles, the trajectories followed by them, examples of such different types of missiles, then different types of engines. Now, any an Audi or a Ferrari cannot make its engine however powerful it is, it cannot reach the hypersonic speeds. And finally, we'll discuss the pros and cons and obviously India's comparison with the rest of the countries. Okay, fine. So this is the image which was taken of the launch of the hypersonic missile system, which was tested off the coast of Odisha from the Abdul Kalam Island, previously known as the Wheeler Island. Fine. Okay, so first point on the agenda was the basics. So this is a sinusoidal wave and this is Sonic the Hedgehog just to keep things light. Okay, so anyways, so first we are going to discuss what are the different terms you might have heard. So first of all, we have ultrasonic. Okay, then we have infrasonic. Then what else? We have subsonic. We have supersonic. Okay, and we have hypersonic. Fine. There's a reason why I have kept these two terms in the white color and this one in the orange color. So these two terms deal with the frequency, which in scientific terms is the cycles per second. It is measured in commonly in hertz. Little deja vu. Okay, I'll explain. Just in basic, I'll not go. So if we have the x and y axis, if you remember, when we used to draw a sinusoidal wave, so it was like this. So the closely spaced the wave will be, the greater the frequency will be. So this portion has a lesser frequency as compared to this. This has a higher frequency. Okay, just remember this. And next, so if you again, if we go back to school, there is a particular frequency range which the human ear can perceive. So it is 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. These sounds which have a frequency only in this range can be perceived, felt, heard by the humans. If the frequency of sound is less than 20 hertz, it is known as infrasonic. If it is greater than 20 kilohertz or 20,000 hertz, then it is ultrasonic, used by animals such as bats. Okay, so this should be clear. Primarily for this lecture, for this session, we'll be dealing with the speeds. Fine. Okay, so this frequency was in brief. Fine. Now we come to the speed. So speed of sound again. So just to be scientifically, physically accurate, at a temperature of 20 degrees Celsius in dry air at sea level, the speed of sound, the speed is basically at the way, the gati ya tezi at which the wave propagates, how fast it propagates, like this. So basically it is different from frequency. Now, so at 20 degrees Celsius, dry air sea level, the speed of sound is approximately 343 meters per second. Okay. Now, why I have specifically mentioned that? Because the speed of sound depends on the density of the medium as well as temperature. Okay, so as we go on the higher altitudes where all these jet engines or the missile spacecrafts, the commercial aircrafts fly, so their density is less, temperatures are also less. There, the speed of sound due to less density is different. Will not go into this, it is normally less than this 343. Fine, just okay. Next is this term very important, which will be used for understanding the hypersonic range. So Mach, like we have AU units or we have light year units. So Mach 1 is used to define this speed, is equivalent to, we are taking this as reference, 343 is equivalent to speed of sound. Basically, if we express it is in the form of a chemical formula, it is the speed of a particular object, ratio of the speed of that particular object upon the speed of sound. Okay, so if an airplane is traveling at exactly the speed of sound, so they will cancel out, 1:1, so it will be traveling at Mach 1. If the speed of that object, aeroplane, missile, whatever it is less than the speed of time, speed of sound, then it will be less than 1 because numerator will be smaller. So it will be subsonic. Subsonic means below the speed of sound. Okay. If it is greater, then we have the categories first, supersonic and hypersonic. So in general, if we the subsonic, now we come to this again. So these subsonic speeds, you've understood the concept of Mach. Normally they range from zero point 0.8 to 1.2 Mach. Okay, normally this is the criteria. Although I have mentioned this above 1, but these categories basically subsonic. So they are the range below. You can simply say, or you can say, just mention to be clearer, below Mach 1. Okay. When it comes to supersonic, it means that the speed of the object is greater than Mach, is greater than the speed of sound. So normally anything ranging from 1 to 5 times the speed of sound. So if an object is traveling in between this category, Mach 1 to Mach 5, from 1 time the speed of sound to 5 times the speed of sound, so it will be categorized as supersonic, and greater than 5 Mach, 5 times the speed of sound, it will be considered hypersonic. So normally again here also the we left this at point 8 to 1.2, then it is 1.2 to 5 and so on. So here just additional chat. So if Mach 5 approximately, what will be the speed required to be reached by a particular object to attain hypersonic speed is 343 meter per second into 5, which will give us 1715 meter per second, which will be equal to, we can say, 1.7 kilometer per second, or we can say it is equivalent to 1 mile per second. So really very high speed. Fine. So I think this basic concept is clear. So let us proceed. Now, the next is the different type of missiles and trajectories. So primarily, there are two types of missiles. One is the ballistic missiles, and one is the cruise missiles. Fine. The basic difference between ballistic and cruise missiles lies in the trajectory. As you can see in this figure, so this is the example of the trajectory or the path followed by a ballistic missile. So it has a parabolic path. Again, a little bit of maths. This path. Okay, it does not have a straight path. It is launched from here. This is the Earth's atmosphere. It reaches, escapes the atmosphere, then it enters. This is the re-entry phase. When it enters again the atmosphere and it strikes the target. So this is basic. Then it has its own set of fuels. It has its oxidizer. Okay, so this ballistic, and it can be easily tracked. It has a predefined trajectory. Okay, communication with that missile is easy. On the other hand, if we consider this cruise missile has a more or less low altitude path. Obviously, since the Earth is curved, so it assumes a curved path, but it can be maneuvered in different altitudes within the atmosphere at low altitudes. There is no concept of as such re-entry. Now the another difference between ballistic and cruise missiles is that ballistic missiles normally they can travel to long distances, and since they have to travel long distances, their average speed is relatively less. In case of cruise missile, they generally travel for short distances but at high speed. Okay, so this is the basic difference and a particular advantage of cruise missiles. Why? Okay, the best example from the Indian point of view, the best example of cruise missile is the BrahMos. Okay, it is the fastest supersonic cruise missile currently. Fastest supersonic. So what was supersonic? Between the speeds of Mach 1.2 to Mach 5, or we can say Mach 1 to Mach 5. So it can reach speeds to around Mach 4. Okay, BrahMos. Fine. BrahMos again important. BrahMos is derived from the two rivers Brahmaputra and Moskva. which flows through Moscow because it was developed earlier in collaboration with Russia, between Russia and India. And the best example of ballistic missile is the Agni, the ICBM Agni 5, the latest one. It has a range of 7,000, around 7,000 kilometers. So it can travel to large distances. It has separate stages like we have in rockets. The thrusters, the propellers, the different stages they disconnect. So similarly, again, the Agni will travel in this way. The BrahMos will travel in this way. Not exactly in this way because BrahMos is normally launched from platforms like it can be launched from Sukhoi aircrafts. So now we have both. We are capable in both most of the advanced countries like US, Russia, China. They are capable in the cruise missiles and they're capable in the ballistic missiles. But now the challenge remains is to develop the hypersonic cruise missiles. That is why what India has achieved recently is of utmost significance. Other examples, if we take the world examples of cruise missile, you might have heard again in the news. Tomahawk cruise missile. This is US. But this is not supersonic, this is a subsonic. Again, the difference should be clear. There are two types. If we have to define a missile, one will be based on the speed and one will be trajectory. Ballistic missiles, they normally travel in a parabolic curved trajectory. Cruise missiles, they travel more or less, we can simplify, in a straight line. Okay. Moreover, speed, when we combine both Tomahawk and India, Russia's BrahMos they are cruise missiles, but this can reach supersonic speeds. This is subsonic speed. Recently, India also unleashed or developed Nirbhay cruise missile, which is again subsonic cruise missile. Fine. And Agni, we know lot of intercontinental ballistic missiles possessed by China. You might have heard of Dafeng. We'll discuss in terms of cruise missiles also. So the ultimate challenge is this. Why? Because if you see, I will show you another diagram here. Now this is interesting. Why we need a hypersonic cruise missile? First of all, speed. It is high speed, so it can travel fast. It can cover right now like BrahMos also. I told you that cruise missiles normally have a short range. BrahMos also has a range of about 290 to 300 kilometers. So it is relatively limited as compared to Agni. But if the time is short, we have to strategically gain advantage over our adversary or enemy. Then we have to strike critically in less time and cover huge distances. So that is why we need speed and we need range as well. And most important, it should not be easily dictated. Okay. This is a very interesting illustration of how a missile, it is very easy to track or detect a ballistic missile, but it is not the same with a cruise missile. So what happens here, if you can see, so here you can see that if we consider, if this is the radar, this is the radar of the enemy, we have to launch, we are situated here, the enemy is here, we have to detonate this target, suppose. So first we talk about the ballistic range. Obviously every radar or every detection device possessed by the enemy or adversary will have a particular range beyond which it cannot detect the bodies, the external bodies, the alien bodies. So here, this portion beyond this dotted line is the region in which if the aircraft missile comes, then only it will be detected. So you see that if we launch a ballistic missile, this blue trajectory, so at this point, it will come in this range of the radar, it will be detected and it will be shot down. Okay, we have different Iron Domes for Israel and India has Akash missile interceptor system. Okay. In case of Just forget is hypersonic. In case of cruise missile, since they are nearer to the ground, so they can travel for a longer distance without being detected. See, the cruise missile for majority of its path is in this zone where it cannot be detected. Only when it enters here, then it will be too late. Okay. Now, so I hope this point is clear. Now, the two type of hypersonic weapons which are important to understand. So, one is the HGV, which is the hypersonic glide vehicle. So, what is this? Here you can see, here you can see. Now forget about this ballistic trajectory. Focus on this red and orange trajectory. So here you can see first this trajectory, it corresponds to the hypersonic glide vehicle mechanism of hypersonic weapons. So here what will happen is the warhead or the glide vehicle, which will be the missile, the weapon, it will be carried by a ballistic missile. It will be carried by a ballistic missile or ballistic component, ballistic rocket, we can say. Okay. Because it requires a weapon, a missile to be launched, it requires some initial speed. So that speed will be provided by this component. Ballistic component of rocket, it will launch, it will be carrying with itself the HGV, hypersonic glide vehicle, and then when it gets the sufficient speed, it will re-enter the atmosphere and start proceeding towards the target as a cruise missile. So this becomes a hypersonic glide vehicle. The other type of hypersonic weapon which we need to know is the hypersonic cruise missile. Now you will see the advantage of why we went back to high school initially in the beginning. So hypersonic cruise missile, which is demonstrated by the orange trajectory. So it can be launched by any jet like Sukhoi, or it can be launched by other aircrafts like MiG at a hypersonic speed, and they function like a cruise missile. They function at lower altitudes and finally they hit the target. Fine. Now the point again, the challenge is till now cruise missiles, even if they or have hypersonic cruise missiles, they have a very short range. You have to remember that even ballistic missiles like Iran's Fatah missile, they can also travel to hypersonic at hypersonic speeds, but they will not be categorized as typically conforming to the concept of hypersonic cruise missiles or hypersonic weapons. Okay, we'll get to that why it is so. First, we'll discuss the examples. Okay, so China Dongfeng 17 carrying. So this is hypersonic glide vehicle. Okay. So here what will happen is that this is a re-entry. This is the first type. So here what will happen? This ballistic missile will carry the DFZF. This is the HGV or the portion carrying the warhead. So this will, if this is the atmosphere, this is the earth. So this Dongfeng 17, this rocket will take this DFZF first to the atmosphere so that it can gain the hypersonic speed, and then it will release this DFZF HGV and then hit the target. Okay, this is an example of AGM 183 air response weapon of US. It is a hypersonic ballistic missile. So it is not conventionally we can say that is a hypersonic weapon. Okay, because it has ballistic tendencies. Here, what will happen is that the B-52, this is the B-52 bomber. It will be carrying the warhead, this AGM ARRW, in the air with it, and when it has to strike, it will launch it. This is the ARRW. Then we have hypersonic ballistic Kinzhal. This was recently in the news. Russia used it against Ukraine. So it is an aircraft. This is the aircraft. It can be carried by MiG or Sukhoi 34. This is the warhead or the hypersonic missile, and it can be launched. Okay. Then we have this Russia's Avangard. Again, this is a hypersonic glide vehicle. So this is a Sarmat ICBM. So Avangard is placed on top of this ICBM, intercontinental ballistic missile, and then again it will first, the ICBM will escape the atmosphere to give the speed to the Avangard HGV, and then it will be glide back to the atmosphere and hit the target. So I hope you are getting the concept. Now, actually, this should have been discussed earlier, but this could have been confusing. So I decided now different types of engine. Why can't we simply use any engine and modify it to attain hypersonic speeds? Okay. So first of all, different type of engines and their functioning. Very important to understand completely holistically this concept of hypersonic missile systems. So first we have turbojet, mostly used in jet engines. Okay, jet engines. If you remember, there was a supersonic plane which was developed, Concorde, which did not become successful. So this uses this turbojet. Don't worry, I'll explain every engine. Another type of engine is turbofan. This turbofan is the engine which is most commonly used in the commercial vehicle, commercial aircraft such as Boeing 747. Okay, there are differences in it. Obviously, jet engines, this turbofans, this engines, if we consider the normal commercial aircrafts, they function at subsonic speeds. Okay, so maximum they will go to around 0.6 to 0.8 Mach. Okay, I hope you remember what Mach is. Okay, so this. Now the basic concept behind this is, you see there are, in a turbofan, I'm using this two terms synonymously, turbofan and turbojet, although don't confuse, these are two different terms. There is a turbine, two important components, turbine and compressor. Okay. All these engines, turbofan, turbojet, ramjet, scramjet, these are known as air breathing engines. What is basically the difference between the engines used by the rockets such as India's PSLV, GSLV, the space shuttles, NASA space shuttle, the Falcon? So they have the fuel and the oxidizer are within the same vehicle, within the same compartment. Here, when we talk about these turbofans, turbojet, ramjet, or scramjet engines, these are also known as air breathing engines. Why? Because if we see this diagram of turbojet, the fuel is already here. Okay, this is the inlet. here the compression takes place, and here from the nozzle the exhaust. So the aircraft it is traveling in this way, the air is entering the turbine. This is the compressor air. This is the compressor. This is the turbine, and this is the exhaust nozzle. Okay. So fuel is already there, like we have in gasoline powered engines. Air, when the aircraft is moving, oxygen is required, oxygen is there. The air will be compressed by the compressor. The compressor is worked by the turbine. That compressor will compress the air. What happens when air is compressed? When air is compressed, the temperature and pressure they rise, and they become fit or appropriate for combustion. It is not that it will just take in air and combustion will start. No, the temperature has to rise, the pressure has to rise. It is compressed, it is mixed with fuel, and under that compression, it is ignited, combusted, and whatever energy gases are released, they are exhausted. They go out from the nozzle, the back nozzle, in the form of exhaust, and they provide a forward thrust. Two things are important. Again, just pay attention. It is very interesting, a bit complicated, but interesting. See, the aircraft is moving in this way. So you have something known as air drag, the resistance provided by air. So the speed at which the air is entering should be less than the speed at which the air is getting exhausted, so that there is a net propulsion towards the direction of motion of that particular missile or aircraft, whatever the vehicle is. Okay, and we know when thrust is provided, Newton's third law of motion, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So when the exhaust after compression, combustion takes place, and then the exhaust, the air pushes to the air is vented out through the exhaust, a thrust and acceleration is produced in the direction of the motion, and this increases the speed. Fine. So this is the basic criteria of functioning of a turbofan. So it is air breathing. It does not have liquid oxygen inside, unlike the missiles or the space shuttles. So this is the basic difference. Now, another type of air breathing engine. Now this we normally turbojet, turbofan, normally in commercial aircrafts now ramjet. Ramjet differences from the turbojet, basically there are no moving parts. Now ramjet, this turbojet is moving, maximum it can go to Mach 3. For going for propulsion or propelling a particular vehicle, missile, payload to greater than Mach 3, it has to move faster. So this turbojet and turbofan combination cannot be used. So for that, the technology that has been invented is this ramjet. So ramjet, there are just nozzles, they are conical shafts. So here also principle is same, but this does not have any moving components. The turbine is removed, the compression is removed. The only thing that is required, since air is already moving at such a high speed, ramjet is moving at above Mach 3 speeds. So all we have to do is lower the speed of air a bit. Okay. So the air is already we have in supersonic, in the supersonic range. So the air speed has to reduce. If we reduce the air speed, the temperature and compression will automatically increase, and the situation will become appropriate, feasible for combustion, and then it will further propel at it at this supersonic speed. Okay. Finally, the hypersonic. Hypersonic, the main criteria, the main engine that all of the scientists, the technology experts are after is to develop scramjet engines, which can make this hypersonic missile system extremely feasible. Okay, so this scramjet engine can work, obviously, it has to work at hypersonic speeds greater than Mach 5. The scramjet engines can work at greater than Mach 6. There is no upper limit till now that has been found out, but it is difficult to establish. We'll discuss why. So, first of all, there is a there is a difference in the structure of the shaft. We'll not go into that, highly technical. So here also again the air is moving at high speed. The funda is to same to reduce its speed a bit, but the main challenge when it comes to developing scramjet engines is that the air is moving at such a speed, it is encountering at such a speed Mach 6 that there is immense drag. There is immense drag and friction. There is a lot of heat produced. So the combustion becomes unfeasible. But only thing to make a scramjet engine successful in its working is again to reduce that hypersonic wind speed to a little less, maybe supersonic, and then again push out the air from the exhaust at such a thrust that it can sustain the high hypersonic speeds. Fine. So this is the challenge. So this is what the people have been working on. So we have discussed how the space shuttle engines are different from the air breathing engines. So scramjet engines are the pivotal, they are the focal point of all hypersonic missiles. Okay. Now finally we come to the pros and cons of development of this. So we have discussed that how are the countries developing, what are the concepts, how the engines are functioning. So first we discussed the advantages, we have discussed the trajectories, so just try to focus on that. First of all, it is difficult to detect because it is, we have discussed the trajectory, we have discussed the geometrical diagram, physics diagram. It is moving close and it is moving at a higher, very high speed. Okay, then critical strikes, if the time is less, if maneuverability is required, because ballistic missiles have a fixed path, fixed trajectory. These, the main advantage of cruise missiles is they can be maneuvered the to a particular location. Fine. So critical strikes, strategic, when the time is less, immediate attack has to be, and they use the motion of the vehicle, the kinetic energy to generate. Warhead is there, the nuclear warhead or conventional warhead is there, but this kinetic energy motion, the air, the thrust, the Newton's law of motion, that helps in making it more devastating. Fine. Now, if we discuss about the disadvantages, so first of all, we have been discussing the feasibility. So there is immense drag, high temperatures, so heat shields have to be used. They're traveling in the atmosphere, they experience a lot friction, so it is difficult, the design is difficult to sustain or develop. Then they are costly to maintain, develop. The technology is still not there, still not fully established, and the maneuverability, because it is already moving at such a high speed, it is moving close to the, in the close to the surface of the earth, it is moving at very high speed, it is covering long distances, so that maneuvering and contact communication becomes difficult. So these are some of the disadvantages. So this overall completes holistically this topic. Okay, so again, all the countries are running behind. We have discussed all. So this technology, that is why again, obviously, just remember that India has a no first use policy. It is just as a nuclear deterrent. So till we meet again next time, Jai Hind.